Also here to welcome you today is Paul Miller. Paul and I have worked together now for about 10 years. Paul is a graduate of Rutgers University and of Rutgers Law School, and he rose from humble upbringings in the mean streets of Passaic, New Jersey, to become the general counsel of Pfizer, the international multinational drug company. He is by far one of the most generous and giving people I've ever met. He has put over a dozen law school students through law school, completely gratis, based on his generosity. He's sponsored an ongoing lectureship at the law school. And a couple years ago, when I had a sabbatical, we were talking about what to focus on. Basically, we talked about the fact that we're living now in a world of increasingly vulnerable communities. It's 1 billion people around the world who now live in countries where they were not born and who are considered the other. And amid a rising tide of intolerance and hate, we decided to focus on how can we help communities that are vulnerable, that are considered the other by the majority population, to survive and to thrive. And we started by taking a look during a sabbatical year that I had at the Jewish communities in Europe, and to identify best practices, because the thought was, as the original diaspora communities, the Jewish communities in Europe have existed and survived in a sometimes murderous climate for hundreds of years. So Paul has generously funded those efforts. We've worked with the Jewish communities in Europe, as you'll hear about later today. We also have worked with Muslim communities in Europe and the United States to try to lessen tension, to be an antidote to the polarization that is occurring all over the world. These efforts would not be possible without the generosity of Paul Miller. So Paul, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you, John. Good morning. I also want to welcome you to this important program. Extremely important and extremely timely, especially when one considers the survey that was released yesterday, Yom HaShoah, reporting on the lack of knowledge of the Holocaust and reported on in this morning's New York Times. I also want to thank the March of the Living, the New Jersey Bar Association, Rutgers School of Law for their co-sponsorship. Let me start with a confession. I am far too old to need the CLE credits which are being awarded today. But I am not too old to understand the meaning of our profession's responsibility to protect the rule of law. We all know the famous line from Shakespeare about killing all the lawyers. There has been a historic difference of opinion about the meaning. One side believes Shakespeare was merely joking, as many use that line today. Others believe, as I do, that Shakespeare had a real message about the important role lawyers play in protecting society, especially when one considers that the line was spoken by anarchists. I believe our profession has an absolute obligation to protect our society from assault by protecting the rule of law. As we will learn from our wonderful speakers, Hitler certainly understood how co-opting our profession could be used to support his march to power and his domination of society. Like the famous Russian joke, it doesn't matter who votes, it doesn't matter how many vote, it only matters who counts the votes. Just as the theme of the program and the march is that we must remember history in order to prevent its repetition of the darkest days, so must our profession never forget the implications of our failure to protect society through protection of the rule of law. Thank you.